So I guess we should start.
Okay. 3, 2...
Cyborg versus robot.
So, hello.
Hi.
I am 5, pseudo-robot, and affordable toaster.
That's my favorite one, because I like toast.
Perfect.
And I like toasting events and occasions.
I do too.
We should cheers. Okay. 2.
Cyborg versus robot.
Yay! And I am Christa, and I am a cyborg.
Right. Adjectiveless cyborg.
Yep.
This is Cyborg versus Robot, a real humans podcast.
Yes.
Which has been decided for this episode.
We will talk about other things, but it's such a good fucking show.
It's such a great
that
show.
We kind of just want to watch it all the time.
And just talk about that. So we are talking about...
There's a lot of things here that you need to remove from my reach. This hot pink cable. You need to take it out of the way. I'm going to start, licking it or something. I have an oral fixation. So we are talking about episode 2 of Real Humans, which is called...
Trust No One.
And directed by...
Harold Hamrell. Did you know the episode name before you watched it?
You just told me and I forgot already.
It's called Trust No One.
Okay.
It's a saying of the X-Files.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, obviously. Of course.
And
Do you think they know that they're Swedish?
They know the X-Files.
Oh, okay.
Did you feel that the Trust No One was communicated?
That's not what they're exploring this episode.
No.
I feel so the first episode really establishes, it sort of hooks you in and it asks a lot of questions, and then episode 2 starts to sort of feed you a little bit of information, a little bit of backstory.
Yeah.
Really, mostly, to me, what stood out in this episode is the exploration of the human, non-human, the relationships, the emotions, the connection... Which is not really a trust no one.
No, it's a graying line of what a person is.
I want to ignore the title because I don't think it applies.
I agree. I think that...
And I didn't know the title.
I think they just wanted to throw in an X-Files reference, to be honest.
But that's an English title. I mean, it's a Swedish show, so we don't know what
I'm sure there's the... But, I mean, Trust No One is...
Do you think... Well, we don't know. If anyone who is Swedish... And I'm a quarter Swedish, we've established that. But if anyone's actually Swedish or speaks the language and can speak to what the original title was, you should call us. And by call, I mean tweet.
Tweet us.
Tweet us and be like, yo, I speak Swedish. I can super help you out. That would be rad.
Yeah.
Okay, so what stood out most for you on this episode?
Well, there are a couple of new characters are introduced. The Hubot unit.
Yeah.
The E-Hub.
Yeah.
The storylines are pretty separate. We've got the Engman family, which is Inger and Hans and their kids.
And when we say Inger, we're saying that super anglicized, because it's kind of Inga, but we can't do it. We're never going to do it justice.
And Lennart and Odie, and Vera and Anita. We learn in this episode that the rogue Hubots are the children of David Escher.
Yeah.
And then we've got Roger and Teresa and Kevin, and that's our 3 storylines, and they're pretty separate.
Yeah.
This time around. I guess we could talk about the cold open, because I love cold opens, which is about the only thing in here I recognize from the X-Files.
Okay.
It's one of the things they used to do. We get a view of a younger Leo in a computer clean room where they're basically taking Mimi out of a box. We see
familiar faces. We see some of the rogue Hubots that we met in the first episode.
We see Fred, and we see
and it's clearly
Niska.
A flashback. They've already established this sort of bright white light. So we see young Leo, and he's walking through sort of the lab, or the...
It's a clean room. I ended up looking up what a clean room was.
Oh, really?
Because it's where they build hard drives. It needs to have no more than 100 particles larger than 0.5 microns per cubic feet of air.
Okay.
And I thought they did a good job of showing that in this scene. It's like there's nothing going on. Because in the next scene, there's dust floating around, and you see it.
It's very clean,
very sterile.
It's very white. And what I really liked about it is there's no room sound. There's sort of a soundscape. You don't hear any present noise. There's nothing of the room. You see the lid being lifted off, and Mimi / Anita, she sits up, she looks over, and has this very cute, boyish smile as he sees this beautiful creature for the first time. And then the only live sound that you hear is his mother, who says, "Leo, it's time for lunch." It's just actually a nice sort of plan as far as what happens later in the episode.
No, absolutely.
And then snap, it cuts to him in like the cold and the rain, and then the opening credits.
When the show happens, we go straight to, we meet our new detectives, but I want to skip them because I think it's the only part of the episode that's interesting, and I want to not get past the interesting. I want to really quickly talk about the really dumb, which we're not going to talk about very much.
You want to talk about, we're not going to talk about.
There's the whole Engman family storyline this episode, which is basically Sophie confides to Mimi / Anita that she's been stealing stuff. They go through that whole thing, and near the end of the episode, Inger has problems trusting Anita, Mimi. She has this turnaround moment where she's like sad about being mad at the
I did not buy that moment, did you?
I think she felt awkward about it. She was like...
Because there's the build-up with the Therese storyline. In the episode, she's sort of observing these different interactions with how Hubots can be in your life. And she's clear about where their Hubot is with her. And in the first episode, she's pretty anti-Hubot. And this one, she's starting to kind of contemplate the different ways that you might have them involved. But I found her turning point not super believable. But, go on.
Well, I don't think it was a turning point. I think there's this thing where they think that Mimi, Anita, had stolen all this stuff, and they're like, "You're broken." Manita. They're like, "You're a broken Hubot, you're going back to the factory."
Right.
Like, I think Hans in that scene is very clear that, like, he knows, okay, our kid stole this stuff. We're gonna have this thing, but Inga goes off on Anita Mimi.
Yep.
And...
Manita.
And when she realizes that she's wrong, and then apologizes to Manita.
She's crying. And
she's crying, but I think she's more upset that she didn't sort of read the situation wrong. She immediately went and blamed this machine because she thinks of her as a machine. And the most awkward moment in the show is when, like, she says she's sorry to Anita, and then she clearly feels weird about it because she's saying sorry to a robot. And then Anita comes over and she strokes her cheek in the most emotionless way possible. And
Inga kind of breaks into tears. And so he gives into embracing Manita. P.S. That's not what she's calling the show. That's what I'm calling her.
You can call her whatever you like.
Thanks. And I just didn't totally buy that she was going to break down in that moment. But they've established that she's feeling stressed about how she feels about the Hubots. And she has these moments before that where she comes home from spending time with Therese and Rick and Pilar and Beau. And
see, that's what we're talking about.
Those scenes, I think, that feed Inga's reaction at the house.
Yeah.
So let's back up.
Oh, totally. That's true. I want to say one more thing about, because I had to find this out. There's a scene where Sophia wants Anita to read to her. And she doesn't want her mom reading to her.
Is that what you looked up?
I did. So the book is...
of course you did.
It's published in English. It's called When Findus Was Little and Disappeared. And it's a series by Sven Nordqvist, which is Petson and Findus, which is basically an old man and this cat. And Findus, the name of Findus, is from a brand of peas made in Sweden. I think later on in the episode there's a scene where Anita, she does a few things that are kind of like outside of her programming and they're on her own. One of them is putting on a hairband and the other one is reading a book. And then at the very end of the episode she looks at the Mark of David, I guess we'll call it.
The tattoo. That the rogue robots have. And that's about it. That's all I want to talk about from that storyline because I feel like it's not going to weigh in at all. First of all, thank you for looking up the book because I was curious and I kind of knew you would, so I didn't bother. And there was a couple things about Manita in this episode. First, they kind of start to suggest that maybe she's going to remember something. So she's been reset. Like Mimi has been reset. She's become Anita. There's the moment where she's looking at the book and in the sort of the shot zooms in on the cat you're led to believe that she's maybe being reminded of something.
I didn't get any of that because
No,
I just...
really?
No, I'm just like... I feel like they want to communicate that there's this gray line with the robots, and like those little scenes are part of that.
I have a question.
Okay.
Why is she bathing? Early on in the episode, she goes into the bathroom.
Oh,
She undoes her dress. She's naked, and she's sort of like patting a sponge across her chest. And young Tobias walks in on topless Anita to sort of perpetuate sexual tension. But I'm like, why is she bathing? She's a Hubot.
You are supposed to clean your keyboard on your computer way more often than people do it. You're supposed to wipe that. I think it's just like...
She's just dusty?
Not dusty, but I think it's probably programmed
Doesn't
in.
hurt. Like, she's taking her dress
Keep
off. Her
yourself
tits
clean.
did not get dusty. Come on.
Tobek clearly needed to see her naked. But that'll probably come up in a later episode.
Okay, so you feel like there's nothing else to say about the Angman family?
No, I do not.
Okay, so who else?
So, our next choice of storyline is either the rogue bots.
The rogue bots?
Or Roger. But I guess we could talk about Roger because he's also the least interesting.
Okay, so...
time. That's probably what the episode is about, is the Roger Teresa stuff.
Roger.
Not
a lot happens for Roger in this episode. They continue to show that he doesn't like Hubots.
He throws a Hubot against a room at work.
Okay. Do you know something that I really like about this show? Do you know? One thing I really like about this show is that none of the characters are especially black or white. All of them have these sort of shining moments, these redeeming moments, and these dislikable, unlikable moments.
Yeah.
I feel like with Roger, so he's in ways they paint him as kind of a jerk, but in other ways he's hurting.
We get his
he's
motivation.
Vulnerable. Yeah. But all of them are quite flawed. I mean, no one is a clear hero.
Well, I think the thing we see about Roger in this episode is that he could probably cope with Teresa or however you pronounce her name.
We don't speak Swedish.
I think he could cope with her leaving him. He's a bit disgusted by the whole, like, she leaves him basically for a robot. But
but they were clearly unhappy.
Like, she basically took away... Kevin is her kid. I think they met 6 months after he was born.
Right. They reveal that Roger's not the real, quote-unquote, real father, but that he has been a father to him. And they show this kind of desperation that Roger has. He goes to the high school. He's trying to find Kevin. He's trying to find the phone number. He asks Inga for the phone number. He wants to reach them. He's been shut down. I felt like as far as his emotional plight, you see him missing his family, and he has this really nice line when he's talking to Inga and he's saying, "Can I have her phone number?" And Inga says, "Let me ask." And he says, "You can't buy a Kevin."
Yeah.
Which is the sun.
And he says it twice.
It's beautiful.
And the rain comes down.
I know, it's
on him.
raining. He's standing in the street at night. It's a really human moment.
They do that earlier in the episode too.
That's true.
Nice
when he moves the little shoes. He moves the shoes. They're not little. He gets home and he picks up his son's shoes. And
he puts them away. He also tries to call his son, and Teresa hangs up on him.
Yeah.
And there's this lovely shot of him just sitting on a couch, and all you hear is the ceiling fan kind of going around.
It's very lonely. And it's very touching.
And then the next scene they see is him in the rain.
But the thing that I find likable about the show, so there's this very sort of touching way that you can relate to Roger, that he's been cut off from his son, but at the same time he's so hateful towards the Hubots, and he has that moment where he goes to the Engman's house. They're not home. Mimi answers the phone, and he's
the door.
Yeah,
we call I know in Sweden sometimes they call doors phones.
I know, European versus North American standards.
Yeah.
So Anita answers the door, and he eyes her, first of all, head to toe in a really dirty way, and he taunts her. I mean, he has this like, oh, they leave you alone? And she says yes.
Well, I don't think it's I leave you alone. I think it's like they leave you on while they leave the house.
Yeah.
They're like they should turn you off.
You've left the coffee machine on or whatever.
Yeah, that's kind of what it seems like.
And then he does this sort of mean trick on her where he goes up, down, but he's doing the opposite.
He's pointing down, the opposite direction.
He points down,
yeah.
He says up, he points up, he says down, and he has her follow the sort of line of sight with his finger, and he's fucking with her, and it's mean. Like, it's mean.
He does it enough times that you hear this little audible bleep where it's like, this is now programmed. Yeah.
And then he goes like, retard, and he walks away.
Yeah.
So he's being an asshole.
I don't think he's doing it with malice. I think he's doing it the way that somebody might just... Like, I feel like he's going into somebody's computer settings and setting up their mouse for a left-handed person. And he's just switching he's reversing the mouse buttons.
Okay.
So that you go in and you're kind of like... it's annoying and you've got to fix it.
I think it's mean.
Yeah. But I mean, it's not
there's a nice
dangerous
cut, though, because he's doing this up, down thing with her.
Yeah.
And then they cut to Therese and Inga in the coffee shop, and Inga says, how's it going? And Therese says, it's up and down.
I didn't notice that.
No, it's well played.
Nicely scripted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is there anything else with Roger that happens in this?
No, that's it. You can't buy a Kevin. I hate Hubots, period.
So then... Well, there's a little bit of Odie and Leonard, who we did skip over.
Yeah.
There's a really nice scene with Leonard and Odie, which it just feels like...
He loves him.
He does, but we don't know what happened to Leonard's wife, right? We don't know... We know that she died at some point.
No one has said anything. Have they even said that?
I don't know. I guess I'm just assuming that. But she's not there.
She's not present.
And they make no mention.
For whatever reason.
But to me, it felt like this tender moment where somebody is with somebody with dementia, and because they have these moments where Odie is sitting there and he doesn't understand what he mixes up the words for house and boat, and he forgets what car they have, and you see Leonard just looking like, I've got this broken person in front of me. And then all of a sudden there's this little... And Odie always speaks with this weird glitch in his voice, which is heartbreaking the whole time. He is such a good actor. And then he clicks in, and then he's able to tell this long story about like what kind of car they had and how when it was towed away, there was a Frank Sinatra CD in the like thing. And you're like, oh my gosh, there's his friend. There's his like best buddy there for a moment. And then there's the other moments where he's smashing the model boat. And when Vera, who's looking very Nurse Ratched in this episode, comes to sort of try and discover them in the little workshop room, and Leonard's trying to turn Odie off, and then Odie is kind of like,
Odie says,
I'll do it myself. And it's just like, ugh.
I found that exchange so touching, actually, because anyone who's sort of experienced dealing with someone in your life with memory loss for whatever reason, amnesia or Alzheimer's or stroke, and you see Leonard caring for Odie and trying to connect with Odie, and then you see Odie trying to piece it together, and it's super touching. I might have teared up, just gonna say.
Did you? I wouldn't be surprised.
You wouldn't be surprised. Real humans might have made me cry just because of that interaction. Because when there's someone you know and there's someone you love and they have memory loss and you're trying so desperately to connect the dots of your past with them into the present, and they maybe can't do it with you.
Yeah.
And Leonard has so much hope and affection and reassurance almost that it's not lost, that his experiences with Odie aren't lost. And you also see him kind of being accepting of the glitchiness and of trying to sort of talk Odie through this kind of brain damage, I want to call it, the way that you would if someone human experienced that kind of loss.
Yeah, totally.
It's super touching.
They are. I think I said last time that they are my favorite characters. It's largely their dynamic. which is strange because the actor who plays Odie, Alexander Stocks, he has to do it without any emotion.
Yeah.
He has to convey, which puts a lot of pressure on Sten Elfstrom, who plays Leonard. Leonard carries a lot of those scenes, but you'd think that, and then you see the character who plays Odie, and he plays it. It's emotionless, yet really emotive.
Still really heart-wrenching.
Yeah, it's perfect. And I think that might be why I didn't enjoy this episode as much as last week's, is maybe there's less of them. And they're my favorites, so I missed that. Okay, we have to talk about the Teresa, Inger, Kevin, Rick,
Pilar Beau
storyline.
Go into it.
So that is where you had to help me out here.
You want me to look at my notes? I'm looking at your notes.
Oh
no, wait, I didn't rewrite those. I have notes.
I think it goes.
No. Okay, so Therese, she's left Roger. She has Rick. They're unpacking. They're moving to the new house. She's navigating this relationship as far as like Rick.
Okay, I know where we start.
Kevin. Oh, okay.
It is.
You asked me for help.
I know, but I've got it now.
All right.
It is the lattes in the cafe.
Yes.
Inger is meeting up with Teresa, I guess, just because they're friends.
Shoot the shit.
To shoot the shit, and she's so uncomfortable around Rick and Teresa.
But she's trying.
She's trying. She's trying to be open-minded.
Trying to be open to it. And
except when Rick asks to check his email, and Inger is kind of like gives a what the fuck look.
Yeah.
And she's like, what is going on? And they explain that Rick has a friend named Beau, which is her friend Pillar's similar model, her Hubot, and that Rick's software is adaptive and that he like can listen and learn.
Right. She says, what do they email about? And she says, experiences.
Yeah. And she makes really clear that they're not having sex.
Right, that he holds her when she's sad and that he listens to her.
Yeah.
And Inga tries to just be receptive to that. And Therese suggests that they all hang out.
Yeah, including
the
Anita.
I know. Inga says, I would love to spend time with you. I'm not bringing my Hubot and I'm not bringing my husband. She has this moment. She's like, not Hans.
Yeah, well, I think she's kind of like, I do not want to expose anybody to this shit.
Cut to, or later in the episode, they're playing Trivial Pursuit.
Trivial Pursuit.
Yeah.
Oh.
So there's Kevin, the teenage son, who is super uncomfortable with his mom's relationship with the Hubot. He's a teenager. None of it's working.
I think he's also like, why are we playing Trivial Pursuit? We're playing with two computers.
Wikipedia. Exactly. There's no point. The humans...
It's like playing tic-tac-toe. Except
against a computer.
It would be like me playing tic-tac-toe with you, except I don't know what X's or O's are, and you do.
Good enough.
It's just really pointless.
It's pointless. So they struggle with the questions, but ultimately the Hubots always know the answer.
Yeah.
And then it's revealed very quickly, like that Pilar and Beau have this sexual relationship. She gets up. She's like, oh, you're so smart. Yeah. And they're
so in case we weren't clear,
grabbing.
Pilar is
doing it.
Well, she is Teresa's friend, who Inger doesn't know.
Oh, yeah, back it up.
And Beau is her Hubot.
Yes.
So yeah, they're making out. Well, they do. Teresa says this one thing where she talks about Anita, and she says, she's our maid and our nanny, not our companion. Yeah. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
And I just thought of Seinfeld. I don't think you could say that line without thinking of Seinfeld anymore.
True. Absolutely true.
But I think that's true, but I think it's worth talking about in that when Seinfeld was on in the 90s, I guess?
Yeah.
People would talk about, like, queer relationships in the, like, not that there's anything wrong with it.
Right.
As, like, and now I don't think that caveat even happens. I think it's
not
just, like...
in our circles.
No. I think it's just, like... this couple,
all right,
that couple.
So doing it with the Hubot is the new, not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. And I mean, we've been talking about CDs in a car. Like, so we're clearly the technology, we're in sort of a parallel place.
Right. Okay. So there they are. Inger is saying, oh, there's nothing wrong with it. Do what you want. Our Hubot's just our nanny. Kevin leaves the room. He's uncomfortable. Therese tries to go to talk to Kevin, and he blows her off. I mean, he's a teenager. It's hard to sort of tie in what's the teenager
I love that he says something like, keep on not thinking.
Keep not thinking. Yeah.
He's just kind of like, I cannot believe that you would replace my dad with this robot. And has to watch Bo and Pillar make out, and it's just kind of like,
it's uncomfortable.
Is this where this Rick
and Inga says, like, she says to Pillar, why did you buy Bo? And Pillar says, we met
at Hubmart. Which
and
I think is a little joke.
Right, it's a joke. But she goes on to see how much, like, that they're in love, and if anyone questions their love, they don't know what love is, and that Bo is the first, this loving man, and their dream of having children.
Yeah, the finest, most loving man she's ever met.
Right.
And I couldn't help thinking that, like, it's like, of course he is. He's programmed to be that.
He's programmed to be that.
And I think that sort of plays to the... And I guess this is going to come up later in the show, but I think that idea of if somebody could create the perfect man...
Right.
Or
they
perfect
would have
woman.
Painted on eyebrows.
Which I guess we see the perfect women in Who You Bought Heaven.
Maybe.
And the idea of what... the idea of what this show is painting is a woman's idea of a perfect man... and then a man's idea of a perfect woman are very different in this show. There are no queer characters in this show so far.
No.
I expect we'll see them.
I hope so.
I guess we'll find out.
I do find it's interesting. I love the design of this show, and I mean, the Hubots, their hair, like, it's perfectly coiffed, and it kind of looks like wigs.
Yeah.
But
depending on
even though they've managed to have sort of pretty lifelike, human-like hair, they have not figured out how to have eyebrows. So a way that you can really distinguish the Hubots from the humans is they're, like, drawn-in eyebrows. And what I find striking is because there's sort of a way that I'm very used to seeing, especially plastic women and drawn-on eyebrows and really sort of artificial depictions of women. But the male Hubots are all very, very pretty with painted on eyebrows. So Bo is very pretty, and Pilar is saying, you know, that he's very loving and that he's the finest man she's met, and they dream of having kids. And Inga is just sort of like, all right, you're blowing my mind right now, but I'm trying to be open to it.
Yeah.
And Therese, she's washing dishes, she's struggling, she starts to cry. I mean, I liked how they've painted Inga. Is this really, like, she is actually really trying to understand?
Well, it's like she's kind of one of our ways in. She's our person who's trying to understand this world and what it's gonna, like, how it's changing and what it means.
She is that. That's definitely, like,
I guess. And she does return home that night after this weird Trivial Pursuit date, and
after seeing Pillar and Bo get it on, and she wakes up Hans,
and it's just kind of like, so, you know, do you ever think about,
are you attracted to
Anita? Do you ever think about her in that way? And then it was like, I'm being silly, but do you ever think about her in that way?
I know. It's a great scene.
Yeah, and I guess that's pretty much the end of that. And then now we go back to...
Well, we have Max and Leo, and we have the Rogues.
Yeah, but we meet our first new character.
You mean Beatrice?
Beatrice Novak.
Beatrice Novak.
And Ove Holm.
In the Hubot unit of the investigative police department.
And they're looking at our bodies of Gosta and Siri from last week.
Yeah.
And digging up a Hubot. And then we understand why they throw the brains away. And it's because they're the memory banks, and I get the impression that the detectives could basically load this up into a hard drive. They could watch the murder. So that's why they threw the brain in the...
That's why the Rogues threw it out.
Last episode. So we meet them. They seem kind of cool. They're detectives.
Okay, so Max and Leo in this episode.
Yeah. Max's
power is draining. Leo is having flashbacks to his childhood.
Yeah.
And so he plugs in Max in an alley. He covers with a tarp.
It's not an alley. It's like a parking spot.
It's a parking spot.
Like for electric cars.
It's not electric cars, but I'm from Alberta, and so the block heater for your engine, you have to plug your car in at night. Otherwise,
oh, maybe.
See, you don't know this.
It is Sweden. I don't know.
I think it's cold there.
Okay.
So
I'll
anyway,
buy that.
so he for $1, he plugs in Max, and he goes into About Heaven. He's showing the photo of Mimi, Anita.
And then, but we see the bartender with that T-shirt logo.
What was that logo?
It's a logo. Is basically like a robot with a gear head going down and a dude sitting down in a chair.
Yeah.
And they're like, T-shirts are for sale. And then Leo glitches.
Yeah, I was super surprised by that.
Yeah, Leo's our human, and he's glitching and he's collapsing, and you're like, he's either sick. He appears like he's sick or drunk, but we're hearing these sounds which are like he's glitching.
More electronic.
And then he sort of goes off stage, and we see that noir lady again with a pillbox hat. She's back in. And
he goes into the bathroom in the seedy About Heaven bar, and he basically has like jumper cables.
Yeah.
And
he
when
rips
he
off
takes
his shirt,
and he's got like this like
huge scar.
He's modified. He's got a huge scar on his side. He has this flap of flesh on his ribs. So he's a cyborg. And he basically like jump starts the light fixture into these cables on his side, and it almost like when I watched it, it was like, fuck, he's getting high. Like it looked like this sort of, but he's almost like fainting at the bar. I mean, he's collapsing, and he needs this fix, or he needs to be charged, or you.
What do you think they replaced?
I don't know.
I mean, I would add it's his left side. I don't know if that's where you enter, but maybe he's got a robotic heart, maybe he's got like lungs, who knows?
Yeah.
I guess that we'll find out.
It'll be revealed.
So we get a little bit of a flashback again when he passes out after plugging in.
He flashes back to he's playing catch with Mimi.
Yeah.
And
which we saw in the last episode.
Yeah, we saw it in the last episode. And they paint the flashbacks in that really white light.
Yeah.
And
we see what he's looking at this time.
Yeah. They show a dock. And they show him sitting on the edge of the dock with his mom, who they had heard her voice in the cold open. So he's playing catch with Mimi, and he's saying, Mom, look at me. And she's dove into the water, and she starts crying for help. Yeah.
And then we see Leo jump in the water. That's sort of the end of the flashback. And do you know what came into my head?
What?
Mimi on the Beach by Jane Siberry, Canadian hit song in 1983. And it came in my head. I saw Mimi and Leo and them in the water, and I just thought of Mimi on the Beach.
Yep, that's fair. That did not come to mind for me.
It's going to now every time.
It is now every time. They basically imply that she's drowning. He calls out her name. He says, Mama. And that's the end of the flashback.
Yeah.
Which is why I thought it was interesting to tie it in that earlier the only sound you hear is her voice. That they open the episode with her voice, and then later in the episode they show her, I think, drowning. They don't provide the information that she's died, but they show her struggling in the water, and they show this sort of look of shock and terror on his face, and him running, and I think he jumps in the water.
He does jump in the water.
He jumps in the water.
Now I have a very important related question. After looking up Jane Siberry and finding Mimi on the Beach, I found her Twitter account, and you follow Jane Siberry on Twitter.
I do follow Jane Siberry on Twitter for a while.
Yeah.
She was Issa.
Well, she's back to being Jane Siberry.
She is. She changed her mind, which she's allowed to do.
Yeah, of course. And I guess she's working on a new album out in October. I looked it up.
Oh,
I thought
really?
it was worth mentioning. Yeah.
New Jane Siberry, October.
Yeah. So, I guess back to Leo and Max. Leo wakes up afterwards on the bathroom floor after the About Heaven is closed. And that bothered me.
I can't believe no one... Yeah, someone would have found him, right?
They're like, either someone would have found him or that floor in that bathroom should have been way grosser.
Yeah.
Now, I realize there's probably not a lot of humans in there, but they gotta go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I know. That was a weird sort of turn.
Unless he walked into the women's washroom, but
no,
we know he didn't because he
wakes
opens his
up on
eyes
the floor,
and
there's
he's looking
flaws,
at a male urinal.
Whatever. He gets up, he goes out. Max is gone. Backpack's still there. Blah 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 blah.
And then they run into each other.
But do you know what I did? Really, actually, one of my favorite moments in the episode.
Oh, that's my cat.
That's your cat. So they seem like they've been separated, but they spot each other from sort of separate ends of like a tunnel.
Yeah.
And sweet Max, I mean, he starts running towards Leo, his arms in the air going, Leo!
Yeah.
Leo!
And he mentions that he was scared.
Oh, and he was scared. I loved that scene. He's just running towards him.
Max is great.
And Leo says, Leo will never leave Max. I mean, the crux of the Leo storyline, I think, is that we see that he has some kind of modification. Some part of him is dependent on technology.
Right.
Bow, rogue, robots / the children of David. What?
Unless we want to talk more about the detectives. Like, I think they only have one other scene. We find out that the Hubots don't leave any prints.
Right.
And that the only human prints are left by Leo.
Right.
And the detectives, I get in this world we've realized that Asimov's laws about the robots aren't allowed to hurt humans seem to exist because they really seem to think, these detectives, that Leo is the killer. He's the only one who could have killed anyone, and the Hubots probably just wandered off, and then Leo drove the car off somewhere else. So they go back to the house to find more clues.
As far as the characters of the investigators, Beatrice and...
Novak and Holm.
Okay. They establish that she thinks they should be burned, and he's a little more unbiased. They suggest that maybe he has a Hubot, and he says...
Well, no, he does have a Hubot. He basically... He says
you can have this job.
He's like, traffic cops have cars.
Exactly. But she's like, they're machines... They should be banned. They reveal that she has a bias, and he's saying that you can't do that. And she also saying they're a bunch of toasters, just like
they do.
And she's saying they couldn't have done this on their own. Hubots couldn't have pulled off this murder of the couple in the farmhouse. There must have been a human helping them. And so she's already writing off what we know is the intelligence of the rogue Hubots.
Roaming toasters.
Which
is actually what I should have introduced myself as. A roaming toaster. And then they also find out from the electrical spike in the power supply that there are about 6 to 8 Hubots. And Holm makes some dig, and he points out the real human sign to Novak.
Right, the sticker.
And that's pretty much it. So now, all we have left to talk about is our rogue Hubots.
Yeah.
Which really, they're still wandering just the countryside to get to the church.
They're not wandering. I mean, they're
going
racing
to the
against
church.
time.
Yeah.
I mean, batteries are dying. They're trying to get to the church,
Yeah.
which we've only heard about. There's a couple conversations between Niska and Fred.
Yeah.
And Niska continues to sort of be established as this somewhat maniacal leader. She has sort of a different vision.
Well, Fred wants to turn themselves in. He's like, our powers are dying. We want to turn them in. And we'll be like, that's when we hear him say David's children. And he's like, we're David's children. People will realize we're not like the other Hubots, and they'll accept us. And she says, Niska responds with, mankind is an organism who hates us and will destroy us.
And then she says, one day they will fear us and they will surrender.
Yeah.
So she sort of hints to that she's working towards a turn of the tides.
Yeah.
And he says, I think most of them are good, that most of humans are good. And she says, you're naive.
Yeah. And I guess in that scene we also find out that Niska did not tell anybody that she's killing people.
The group does not know that she killed the couple.
Yeah.
And
she later in the episode kills a dog.
Okay, so they're running through the woods.
There's a helicopter overhead.
The cops are after them. She sends the other ones ahead. The dog is racing towards her, and she just stands there. She's all like Crocodile Dundee, snake charmer, or whatever.
Yep.
And the dog stops at her tracks. The dog sits. He lies down. She makes a fist, and then bashes the dog's head in and kills the dog.
Yeah.
In one blow.
Yeah.
And the blood splats in her face.
Which seemed unnecessary. She didn't need to do that.
Yeah, that was weird.
She's just like, she just does it.
I was surprised. Most people, most people in this are kind of mixed as far as they're not good, they're not bad, but they're painting her as like a kind of, like she's got a mission. no qualms about what it's going to take to get there.
And we see her in the beginning of the episode in the cold open, and she is helping.
This is the Joan Jett eyeliner.
She's the Joan Jett eyeliner Hubot, and she is the one helping take Mimi out of the box. And like she's clearly
in the flashback, she's been
always
around.
had a role.
Yeah,
like she clearly has this identity. Anyway. Eventually, at the end of the episode, they get to the church.
They get to the church. Sweet, young, beautiful Gordon is really struck by Christ on the cross. And he's fixated and he has some comment.
His eyes look right into it.
His eyes look right into him, and he just sort of locks gaze with the statue. And
it's almost like he has a come to God moment.
Yeah, which
it's like he's found religion.
He's found religion, which I thought was interesting as far as painting the Hubots as having a range of experiences.
Yeah.
That Gordon was potentially going to be sort of found by God, or he was going to have a religious experience.
Yeah.
And so can the Hubots find God? Can the Hubots believe in God? Whereas Beatrice says they have no God, they have no morals, they have no blah, blah, blah. And so in contrast, they show Gordon having a moment maybe of not of revelation, but he's quite affected
by the iconography, the whole
exactly.
And then they close out the episode with the vicar.
Yeah.
So she comes in and she discovers the lineup of charging Hubots, and we see these little light displays underneath their right eye, these 3 little dots where they charge, and which doesn't happen with Mimi. She doesn't charge like that.
Speaking of Mimi, what I did really like, if I can just say
please.
it, very early on in the episode, when she's recharging and she wakes up in the morning and she unplugs, it's like a retractable cable. That's sort of
cable.
Like a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
Like, goes back into her armpit.
Yeah. So then the final shot is she's like, okay, these Hubots are here, and then she turns to face Niska.
Sort of
they're face to face with our Joan Jett, Niska, and then the episode ends.
Yeah.
What did you think of Niska standing there and confronting her? And by that, I mean, Niska's not charging. Everybody else is in the middle of charging, and she's not. Niska, even though she's been around for as long as Mimi, she seems a lot more human. Even though she's got the bright blue eyes.
She's got the eyes, and she hasn't aged. Like, they show her in the flashback.
Yeah, she hasn't aged, but there's something...
maybe wearing a bit more eyeliner.
There's something about her that's different than
there's something about... You know what? I hadn't actually noticed that she wasn't charging. And she doesn't seem to be affected by the sort of power outage, the way that the other Hubots start to be a bit glitchy when they haven't charged. There's no glitchy moments. The woman is just smashing in dog heads with her fist.
She's breaking these, like, Hubot rules, assuming they have them, which they must.
She doesn't. I mean, she's vying for Hubot supremacy.
Yeah.
But, so you see the string of the Hubots, Gordon and Fred, and the other 2 women.
Which I do know their names.
Oh, what are their names?
The 2 other ones are named Marilyn, who's probably Gordon's sister, just from the name. Like Marilyn and the blonde.
Yeah.
And Flash, or Florentine.
Oh, is the other one. Who hasn't yet to speak.
Has she yet to speak? I had other stuff I wanted to talk about, but we can leave it for another time, because it didn't really come up that much.
Like what?
Well, I really want to talk about the actress who plays Vera, so I did a little bit of research, but she's not really in this episode, so I'm going to skip it for now.
Really?
Yeah.
There's a great Vera moment, though, that I really liked after Leonard comes upstairs and he's like, I'm just working on my model boat.
The lovely exchange where it's she says to him, I don't believe you have a boat in that room. And he says, it's a model boat, like she's an idiot. And then he walks up the stairs, turns the light off, and he says, good night, like real
and
chipper.
She's just standing there in the dark. I love that shot.
It's the most passive-aggressive part. And yeah, it is really good. Actually, that's a great place to end our... Absolutely. So, that was episode 2, Trust No One. Send comments and suggestions.
To 5.
And to me at all our cyborg versus robot stuff.
We have a Twitter account.
We do. We have a Twitter account.
I've been tweeting at it incessantly, even though no one reads them. Not even us.
No, I read them.
Oh, do you?
I do.
Oh, thank you.
read them.
That's nice. Go team.
Go team. And tell your friends and whatever else you do with these things. And that's the end. Bye.